what we do is we put expectations on ourselves. And what these expectations do is they set us up for disappointment. They set us up for fear. They set us up for failing. What if we could take it another way and we looked at it forward?
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch. We'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. Ansoffs Matrix, created by Igor Ansoff in the 1960s, is a marketing model that stands the test of time, and we'll see why later. But first, we're going to have a chat with Leonard Kim about all things influence. Leonard is the Managing Partner of InfluenceTree, an organisation that teaches you how to build your brand, be it personal or business. But that isn't the end of his story. As you'll find out, the stories we tell are important, as Leonard has been featured in Inc. magazine, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Fortune, and the Huffington Post. He's also one of the top writers in the fields of marketing and business strategy. But before we learn a lot more about Leonard, I had one burning question I needed to be answered. Leonard, what are you afraid of?
Oh, I'm absolutely afraid of everything. My whole life is really guided by fear. If you think about it, all the scary things that really happen in life really end up becoming the best things that we ever do. Sometimes when we really look at fear, what ends up happening is we get stuck, we get afraid, we look at fear and we're like, oh, fear's here. What should we do? Should we run away? What should we do? But in reality, when you don't just face your fears, you do something about your fears. And that fear is really an indicator that you're onto something great. You probably have something that is going to connect with other people. You're probably going to have something where other people are like, wow, this is something that's really cool. But our fears are like false indicators pretending that something is wrong when in reality it's just guiding us the right way.
That's an amazing answer. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
So what's your story then? What's brought you to this stage of your career as a keynote speaker and managing partner at InfluenceTree?
Well, if you go back all the way to about 2010, I was getting evicted from my home. I had to go live with my grandma. I thought I was going to go live under a bridge, and everything just went sour. Like all the things that I ever did before just failed miserably. And I was like, okay, so what am I stuck left with? And I kind of gave up. I was living with my grandma for a while, and then I was playing video games and just, laying around in bed, enjoying life, just giving up, doing what people who give up do. And one day she started yelling at me, and she's like, go find a job. So I went on Craigslist. I found the first job I could find. And I worked there for about 9 months. They paid me $2,600 or $2,400 total for that 9 months. But then I didn't want my grandma to yell at me anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'll go work at the startup. We'll see if we can make something big. We'll see if we'll get funding and all this other fun stuff. Of course, none of that really happened. I mean, he got like 50 grand, but 50 grand is not really enough to really call it business. And it came to a point where I was like, I got to move out from my grandma's house. I got to go live back in LA. I was living in Orange County, which is about 30 miles away. And I moved back, lived on the sofa for a while. And then after 2 months, my $300 was running out. So I had to start desperately looking for a job. I applied to go work at a company called American Honda. They make those cars. And while working there, I got a job working and earning $16.24 an hour. I had to take my routine looked like this. In the morning, I'd get up. I'd have to take about 10 minutes to walk to the subway station. I'd take the subway to a bus. And then I'd take that bus down the freeway to another bus, and I'd have to walk 10 minutes into the office. So that took about an hour. Then on the way home, it would take about an hour and a half the other way around. And I worked there for about 2 years, and I didn't get a promotion. I didn't get a raise. I didn't really get anything. And taxes started going up. Rent went up 3% every year. This new healthcare tax came out and took $90 a month out of my paycheck. I was like, okay, I'm getting poorer and poorer by the day. I can't afford my $1.64 quesadilla at lunch anymore. Something's wrong. I got to do something to change this. So I tried multiple things. I tried applying for hundreds of jobs. No one wanted to hire me. I tried going out there and saying, you know what, maybe I could go out there and go back to school and see if that works. But that's a long-term plan. And then the other thing I tried doing was I'm like, you know what? I always thought I liked writing. I used to write love letters to girls, and maybe that would work. So I tried doing that. And suddenly, the weird thing is that took off. And within 6 months, I had 2 million reads. The next year, I picked up 10 million reads, and a lot of people kept asking me, can you teach me how to do what you did? Can you teach me? I'm like, no, I don't have time. Then in 2015, it dawned upon me. I'm like, whoa, I have this brilliant idea. Maybe I can make a company where I have courses that teach people how to build a brand, grow their social media following, and get place some media. I'm like, wow, this is brilliant. So, and the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, I put up 3 articles. I think one went up in Entrepreneur, one went up in Inc. magazine, and one went up in Fortune. And I talked about like the services and the type of things that you could really get with personal branding. And we had 1,000 visitors come into the website. 100 people saw the pricing, and they're like, "We want this course." So my business partner and I, Ryan Folan, we were like, "We got to make this course now." Because we wanted to prove the concept, make sure people really wanted it before we went out there and did it. And by the time we finished the course, people started asking, hey, can you do services like this for us? Can you go and do all the execution for this? And we're like, yeah. And then we started getting speaking engagements everywhere. In 2016, 2017, and 2018, I picked up 50 media features, and then another 200, and another 50. So I had like 300 media features under my belt. Ended up writing a book that I finished up in February that comes out in October. And I picked up a lot of great clients, like a New York Times bestselling author, someone who worked at Cisco or works at Cisco and is their VP of IoT, a few venture capitalists, a lot of other people working at big companies like Dropbox and things like that. And just today, I landed a client with someone who I respected for like the last 4 years and looked up to. And it's like, oh, now you're getting my services.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
Yeah,
your story highlights the fact that you just keep going and doors open and you just don't know what's around the corner, you know.
Yeah, and it kind of does. But I think one of the things that really was different between my journey from making it to my journey of not making it and going bankrupt and losing everything that I had, I think the main difference with that was attitude. Like, my success came when I had a attitude of gratitude, where I thought about what I was like grateful for, when I went out there and like was in tune with nature, and I was in the moment instead of like living in the fast lane, going out there and doing things like exercising and doing all that other stuff that people might think is like, laughable. But I think that shift in mindset and everything, and doing those tiny little things is really what changed all that.
So sticking with that point, I'd just like to discuss your book, Ditch the Act. What's it all about? Why you wrote it? What are the takeaways? And what can people gain from reading it?
Sure. So why I wrote the book is going to be like the answer that no one wants to hear and no one expects to hear, because I never thought that I would ever write a book. It was not like something like, oh, Leonard, one day you're going to write a book. I'm like, that thing's 50,000 words. That's the furthest thing I ever want to do. But in 2016, Wiley reached out to me and said, hey, are you working on a book? Let's schedule a call and talk about it. And Wiley's like one of the top 5 book publishers. Then later in 2016, at the tail end of the year, like December, Portfolio, which is Penguin Random House's book division, and Penguin Random House is the #1 book publisher. They said, hey, are you working on a book? And I'm like, well, now I am. And then the one thing that they wanted me to do is they wanted me to put that together like a proposal so I could go and sell the book to them. And I'm like, you want a proposal? You want me to make a proposal to go get me to work and write 50,000 words? That's absurd. So I hired a junior level guy for about 2 grand to go and write a proposal for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's good enough. Two agents approached us at the same time, and then they went and shopped it with all the publishers, and no one wanted that specific book. So we had to go back to the drawing board. Our agent recommended we hire a consultant. We paid that consultant 20 grand. And he did a deep dive on ourselves and figured out what were the key things that really stuck out from us, the things that we own. And through that deep dive, he put together a proposal for us, and we reshopped it around. And McGraw-Hill or Harper's Collins put in a bid, but ultimately we went with McGraw-Hill, which is still a top 5. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely great story. So what's the book about then?
Oh, sure. So, in the process of writing the book, for the first month, we were like, okay, what's this proposal actually about? So we had to like read through it and be like, okay, I could get behind this. I could do this. And then also at the same time, we saw a few things like, oh, this chapter makes absolutely no sense. We got to go chop that and finesse it to what it really should be. So the first 2 months, we went out and really studied what the material should be, which was kind of okay because we knew the material. We just didn't know how it was laid out. The next 2 months, what we had to do is we had to write out all the mini chapters, so like little bullet points on every single point within the book, so we could go and connect every single story together to make sure we didn't miss research, personal stories, and anything like that. Then the next 2 months really came to writing. That entire writing process was kind of interesting, and what was great about it is I wrote this book with Ryan Foland, so when I go out there and I'd say something saying like, oh, go share a level 4 exposure, which could be like a failed business or a failed marriage or something like that, which people freak out about, right? Ryan would be like, no one's going to ever do that. And then we have to go and go, okay, there's level 1 to level 5 exposures and kind of level it out. Then when Ryan would go out there and make a worksheet, I'd be like, you can't duplicate that based off what you wrote. So then he had to go back to the drawing board and make sure that worksheet was duplicatable. Now, what the book is really about is going out there and ditching the act to be your whole self. And that involves the good, the bad, and the ugly. So many people out there are preaching about the value of authenticity. It's like the new black if you really think about it. People are like, this is what everyone needs to do. But no one is actually showing you a game plan of exactly how to do it. So what we did is we broke the book up into 3 sections. The first section is me and Ryan's personal, vulnerable stories, going out there and leading by example. And because we're leading by example, it shows people how to do it. It shows them through our own personal actions. Then we kind of shift it over and move into why you actually need to go out there and share your whole self. And we build a deep case for it based off different situations that happen in the real world. Like, for example, when you go out there and you don't reveal your whole self, let's say you're going out there and doing something absolutely absurd, like running for the presidential office, kind of like what George Bush did and Obama. Both of them ran for that presidential office. Now, one person almost lost absolutely everything that he worked his entire life to go and achieve because he tried to hide a DUI. When George Bush tried to hide that, the media controlled that narrative and tried to take that position away from him. And sometimes when you have your skeletons and you go and hide them in your closet, what could end up happening is someone can take all your dreams away from you and use that skeleton against you. Now, on the other hand, even though Obama had a difficult time getting into the Oval Office due to race and other things like that, one thing that was never held against him was his past and the things that he did beforehand. Like in an interview with someone, they asked straight out, have you ever did cocaine before? And he's like, yes. And then, like, if he said no or he tried to cover it up, that could have been completely used against him. But it doesn't even go with becoming like bulletproof or having a full armor so you can go out there and succeed. It goes even further. When I go out there and I share my deepest vulnerabilities with you, I'm able to create a deep relationship with you where I build instantaneous trust, where you feel like you've known me my entire life. And what's that worth? That's invaluable. That's what you could go out there and you could take, and you could go and build camaraderie and build a trusting relationship where we each have each other's back and we look out for each other. And that's what really drives true success. So the third part of that's really the worksheets and exactly how to do all that and implement it all.
Sounds amazing. Fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
Speaking of more influencer marketing, uh, is it easy or difficult for an actual organization to use influencer marketing to develop a brand?
Well, when you look at influencer marketing, you have to think about it from a few different perspectives. What's this person's affinity to your brand? Do they actually use it? Do they actually like your services? How are you going to keep them loyal for going out there and using and promoting you? Are you just going to cut them a paycheck and make sure that they go out there and do their things? Are they going to just post something and then go on to the next thing? Or are they actually going to be a loyal advocate? And then you have all these different variables, and it even goes as far to how engaged is that person's audience? And how much affinity do they have when they're going out there and promoting things? There's so many different factors that you really look at. What if you could go and you could spin it around? Instead of going out there and being a company and hiring influencers, what if you could go and create your own influencers internally? That's by going out there and turning your employees into advocates for your brand. Now, if you look at places like Adobe, Dell, EA, they've gone out there and they've created a platform where employees could go out there and create their own content. Now, I work at a place called Keck Medicine of the University of Southern California, and I've been doing the same thing, where I've been getting the physicians who are experts at certain things to go out there and create their own content. And what ends up happening is, like, let's look at a brand, for example. When we look at, like, let's say, name a random brand.
Okay, well, the easy one, Nike.
Nike. Okay. When you look at Nike, sometimes you could get affinity towards them, and sometimes it's difficult. Usually you get that affinity towards them because you see an athlete that you really like and you're like, oh, Michael Jordan wears Nike, I could wear Nike too. So what the brand's doing is they're actually putting a face to that brand. Now, when, let's say you work at an organization and there's about 5,000 people who work there, what if you could make those people who work there become the face of your brand? Now, people out there are already sharing content. They're already going out there and sharing the things that they love, the things that they do, their baby photos, and they're building relationships with other people. What if they sprinkled in a little bit of what they did for work within that content too? Now, there's no way in the world you're going to get as loyal of an audience from your brand as opposed to a person. My friend Joe Martin, who headed up the entire employee advocacy program over at Adobe, he ran the same ad from the Adobe account as he did from his personal account. Put the same amount of money behind both ads. Guess which one performed better?
The personal one.
And it performed 10 times better.
Wow.
So, there's so many firms out there going, oh, I'll get you 25% higher conversions or 25% higher click-throughs. You're getting a 10x click-through when you use the other person. There's a doctor, Dr. Mary Simplaski, who I work with. She has a Twitter account with about 300, 400 followers. She built a brand new Facebook page. She went out there and used her LinkedIn for the first time that she's never used for anything. We worked with her to create a video together and co-branded it between the brand and her. We put that onto her profiles, then reshared it from the brand account. That video ended up getting 6,000 views, 5,000 from her Twitter account, 600 from a brand new Facebook page with 0 following, and then another 800-ish coming in from LinkedIn. And if you really think about it, it's because people are able to connect with when you think about how people connect, they go with people they know, like, and trust. How easy is it to go and know, like, and trust the person versus a brand? Like when I go and look at, let's see, random brand, Cricket on the table. This Cricket thing, like, how much affinity am I going to grow with that Cricket machine? It's pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at my football team just reached a cup final last night, and sport's just the perfect example. Yeah. There's the brand, and that makes the money, but it's everything to do with that team, the players, the staff, how they act off the pitch, on the pitch, and particularly with social being so important in that environment as well.
Yeah, and people. When's the last time you said to yourself, "Oh, I can't wait for that new commercial," or "I can't wait for that new message from that brand"? Like, I don't think I've ever said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how do you keep yourself authentic, especially in an online environment then?
Well, if you think about it, like let's look at our world. At least in America, it's probably pretty similar over in the UK. But what if we look at people who were about 50 years old, 60 years old, kind of like my mom's age? Actually, let's go a little bit beyond that. Like my grandfather. In my grandfather's time, there were a lot of people who looked at each other on the street, smiled, waved, said hi, talked to each other, actually built connections and everything like that. But then there became this with my mom's generation, what ended up happening is was who has the bigger house, who has the bigger vote, and everyone started competing and then started going towards working as hard as they could so they could have more things. What that kind of did is it created this disconnect in society where people no longer went out there and said hi and waved to you, and then it even progressed even further where today the people my age, where if you look on a platform like Instagram, all you see is people competing with each other to show who's happier, who's on the best vacation, who's out there and showing the happiest photos ever. And what this has all kind of created is a world where so many people are having difficulty creating those heart-to-heart connections with others. Is this the reason that we have like so much depression now? Is this the reason we have so much anxiety? I mean, it's not for certain, but I mean, they could play a huge contributing factor to it. And everyone is led to believe that they need to put their best foot forward. And if you look at it, not outside of just the online world, how are you supposed to act at work? With your boss, you have to act a certain way. With your coworker, a certain way. With your direct report, a certain way. With the CEO of the company, a certain way. With friends, you have your best friend, your colleague, your acquaintance, the person you just met. With your parents, you probably treat your brother and sister a little differently, and maybe your mother and your cousins and your father too. And then we have all these invisible rules with how we treat every single person. And that even goes online. Like LinkedIn, we're supposed to be a business voice. On Facebook, we could share pictures of our babies. On Twitter, we could go and talk about who knows what, but we have all these unspoken rules on how we're supposed to treat everything. But what if we could take a step back and instead be our whole self everywhere? Break down those walls, strip them away, and instead of thinking, oh, how could I go out there and be like a business person on LinkedIn, or how could I go out there and treat my coworker who's my direct colleague a certain way? What if I could be that same person all throughout? One, I hear that when people have like two different personalities, what ends up happening is they get checked into a hospital for some kind of mental disorder. But we're caring about like 10 to 20 if we really think about it. And that's got to be crushing our souls. If we could go out there and be exactly who we are, offline, online, at home, at work, and everything like that, then authenticity becomes simple. Now, the implementation of doing that becomes difficult because it's like, what do I share? How do I go out there and do that? We're used to sharing our best moments online. It's in our nature. So we have to go through 4 levels of exposure. Level 1 exposure is like, let's say I get this water bottle and I like kind of open it up and then I go to drink it and then I'm like spilling on myself, right? Like if I'm spilling on myself, chances are I'm never going to post that online. But what if I do? When I
Hmm.
go out there and I start sharing those things, I become more vulnerable and more authentic. And let's say I go through some major hardship in life, and let's say I lose a spouse, I lose a family member, I lose a job. I go out there and share that without sharing anything vulnerable before. It looks like I'm having a mental breakdown. Everyone wants to push away from me. But if I'm going out there and sharing level 1, level 2, level 3, then something level 4 happens, guess what? People are going to band behind me and support me and go, how can I help you get through this?
I've
So
never
it's
thought of it
all.
like that. That's amazing. um,
Thank you.
one final kind of deep question before we go into a couple of quick fire questions, if you don't mind. When students start a qualification, it can be any type of study. It can feel a
Sure.
little overwhelming at the very start before they get into it. They've got all these models and concepts and theories and stuff to learn and things being thrown at them. How do you counteract this feeling of overwhelm and turn it into positive actions?
Well, one thing that I found with a lot of success when I turned to my career is like, let's say I looked at it from backwards to now and said, oh, I'm going to go out there and get 10 million reads. So I kind of felt this way when I released the book because I got caught into the weeds and I'm like, how am I going to sell 11,000 copies to hit the New York Times bestseller list in a week? And then looking forward, I demotivated myself. I psyched myself out. I wanted to go out there and go hide in my bedroom and say, I never want to go out there again. But then what we do is we put expectations on ourselves. And what these expectations do is they set us up for disappointment. They set us up for fear. They set us up for failing. What if we could take it another way and we looked at it forward? Like, okay, I'm going to just do chapter 1 today and read chapter 1 today and see what I could learn. Tomorrow, I'm going to go and test myself on chapter 1 and see what I actually picked up and learned. If we take it and we use baby steps instead and look forward instead of looking at the impending doom of what's going to happen, and you take that expectation of completing the test or failing or succeeding off the table, then usually you end up like surpassing your own imaginations. Like, I never thought I would have 10 million reads. When I tell people I have 10 million reads, they're like, what? You had 10 million reads? And I'm like, yeah, I'm as shocked as you are. And then, like, what if you're going out there and taking that approach with a test or an exam or a study? Then chances are you're probably going to actually pass with flying colors.
I love the phrase you use there, impending doom. It's just brilliant. Just remove the impending doom, focus on the now. Excellent. Leonard, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Sure.
Okay. Name one must-read business book.
Well, I'd say it's Ditch the Act, Reveal the Surprising Power of the Real You for Greater Success. You can pre-order it now. It's available October 25th. But another book that's not written by me is this Limitless book by Laura Gassner-Oetting. Pretty powerful stuff. I get into detail, but it says how to ignore everybody, carve your own path, and live your best life. Pretty cool stuff. You can go and look it up.
Excellent. What was the last thing you Googled?
Let's see. There was actually this cat that jumped into a box. It's pretty hilarious. So have you ever, I typed in Maru jump out box and there's this Maru cat. And if you go on Google, there's like this little kitty and then like its whole purpose is to like jump into the box. So it finds this cardboard box and like jumps in. It's like amazing.
I think you just highlighted the fact of being authentic here and talking about, you could have said anything, but we've gone with the cat.
It's really what I Googled.
Brilliant. What's your most used app at the moment?
I don't really know. No idea. I'm usually on Twitter a lot, so I guess that app is the one that I use the most.
Sure.
Lately, it's been Dropbox because a photographer just took a ton of photos of me and Ryan. So I've been going through and picking out photos. So I guess Dropbox too.
Excellent.
Oh, wait, Cloud App. I'm supposed to say Cloud App.
Oh, right, okay. What would be your one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
I mean, go out there and don't stress too hard about it. Use time to go out there and relax and enjoy yourself. Really, it's not a sprint. It's kind of a marathon, and you can take your time going at it. You don't really have to go out there and crunch yourself and stress yourself out and spend like 4 to 8 hours a day just trying to get it all engraved because it's all subconsciously going to get to you. You're going to remember it as long as you read the material and maybe read it again and just take the conscious time and effort to sprinkle studying into your day. You're probably going to pass it.
Yeah, excellent. So final question, most important one. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about InfluenceTree or what you do, where should they go?
Sure. So my website's leonardkim.com. I'm most active on social media on Twitter, so you can find me there at Mr. Leonard Kim. If you want to learn more about InfluenceTree and potentially take a course or go out there and have me consult or do some done-for-you services, my website's influencetree.com. And you could always find the book Ditch the Act either by Googling it, going to its website, going to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or any of the many retailers. And the book will be out in October. And yeah.
Leonard, absolutely amazing speaking to you. It's been fantastic, and I can't wait till October, till the book's out, to give it a good read. Can't wait for it.
Aw, thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate that.
How do you summarize that interview? Well, here are a few takeaways that I got from it. The first one is fear. Do something about your own fears. Don't just face them, embrace them and work through it. Fears can be false indicators, yet these usually end up being the best things we ever do. I started this podcast and I hadn't got a clue if even one person would listen to it, and I'm grateful that every single person that's listening to my dulcet tones right now, thank you so much. When writing his book, Ditch the Act, the link's in the show notes, Leonard spent the time to get his material he needed correct. Then he looked at the structure, placed the info into chapters using bullet points initially, and then made it make sense chapter after chapter, small, manageable pieces, which is so similar to writing marketing exams and assignments. A lot can be taken from this. And finally, when looking to utilize an influencer within the B2B space, in any industry, you need to consider the following. Does this person like or use your product or service? Will they stay loyal and be an advocate for a long time? Check out their audience. Are they right for your brand? Are they a correct fit? And how much influence do they actually have over this audience? And again, make sure it's a right fit. But the most important takeaway here is that you should look internally for your influencers and make your employees the advocates. And finally, on this week's episode, as we found out at the start, Igor Ansoffs Matrix has been around for over 50 years, but it's still used today in academia and in practice. So what is it and how can it be used? Firstly, there's a link in the show notes that will take you to a diagram of this model. You may find it useful to look at this model while listening to this explanation. Okay? Got it? Nice one. In essence, this model can assist with strategic marketing planning when looking for growth opportunities. It is split into 4 distinct strategic directions depending on 4 factors. Products, are they new or existing? And markets, are these new or existing? Depending on the market and product or service you are focusing on, will determine the overall strategic direction that should be the main focus of the business and, more importantly, your marketing strategy. For example, for a new product that is entering an existing market, a product development strategy is required. This could mean a number of things, such as line extensions or product developments due to R&D and feedback, where the company is looking to introduce these developments into an existing market where the brand is already known, which would be massively different from any other type of strategy that Ansoff highlights. Understanding all 4 strategic outcomes from this model, market penetration, market development, product development, which we've spoken about, and diversification, means we can look to utilize tactics that complement this direction, making the strategy much more manageable and achievable. But like any good strategic model, we can only come to these solutions and decisions once we've done our research, our situation analysis, and understand where we are and the potential gaps in the market that could be developed. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.